Chelek, which is Sanhedrin page 91a, Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph. Well, this is famous Gemara about Geviha ben Pesisa, and he was a person that had different challenges, responded to different challenges that the Jewish people were facing when Alexander the Great took over the area of the Middle East and conquered the Middle East, including Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says like this: Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learned, middle of the page. Be'esrim v'arba b'Nisan, the 24th of Nisan, which is in the Gemara, Tainus says as a day of a holiday. We don't say eulogies, so this is after Pesach, of course. Otherwise, we wouldn't say eulogies anyways. Is Anantilu de Musane Mihudo mi Yerushalayim, that the people from Musane, which Rashi says are people that are Bali Chomas. They were people that were rough people, that they wanted to take part in. They wanted to take parts of Yerushalayim away from Eretz Yisrael, from the Jewish people. So it says that what happened? Kishabo b'nei Afrikiya, when the descendants of those who were from Africa came, Lodin im Yisrael lifnei Alexander of Macedon. They came to Eretz Yisrael to have a judgment with Alexander the Great, Alexander from Macedon. So this is what their claim was. Eretz Canaan, they're calling it Eretz Canaan, which is the land as it's known in the Torah, part of the Torah. Hey, Aaron, we're just starting. So we're learning the Gemara, this famous story of Geviha ben Pesisa. So on the 24th of the month of Nisan is a holiday because the Jewish people got rid of their enemy, which are called the Misune. Hey, Avi, the middle page, Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph, Tana Rabbanan. So the 24th of Nisan is the holiday because the people of Musane, which are like Rashi says, people of Chames, people that are trying to steal land from Eretz Yisrael, from the Jewish people, that they were expelled from Yehud and Yerushalayim. What was the story? That the Bnei Afrikiya, these are descendants of these are Africans, which are claiming to be descendants of the biblical Canaanites, that they came Lodin in Yisrael of Alexander Macedon. They came to have a day of judgment in front of Alexander the Great, who was the conqueror, all that area, Africa included, North Africa included, with the Jewish people. And this is what their claim was. They said, Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan, Shalanuhi, it's ours. Dichsiv, how do we know? So he says they quoted a verse from the Torah. It says, Dichsiv, Eretz Canaan l'gvuloi seha. These are the borders of Canaan. U'Canaan avun dahanu inshi yave. And they're talking in the third party. And he said, in Canaan is the father of these people, meaning of these Africans who claim to be descendants of the Canaans. No one's arguing if they were or not, but they claim that the verse in the Torah says this is the land of Canaan with its boundaries. So this is our father, this is our inheritance. And this is the claim that they came to Alexander the Great, i.e., to kick the Jews out, the Bnei Israel out, and they should have the land. So the rabbis they don't know how to deal with the situation. Rashi says, Spratan the Marsha says that these were descendants of the Girgashi. You know, the Canaan is a general name for the different descendants of Canaan. This Canaan, the seven lands. One of the descendants is the Girgashi. Girgashi were kind of a people that are in and out because they weren't really. They kind of stuck around. They left early. They kind of didn't get dealt with like the other Canaan descendants of Canaan that the Jewish people dealt with when they came into the land with Joshua, and then later in the beginning and in the time of the judges. So the Ramashah says they're the descendants of the Girgashi, and so they want the land. They said that the land belongs to them because it's Canaan. So there's a person we finished off last class about Geviha ben Pesisa. That Geviha ben Pesisa was a person that dealt with heretics. So we're learning other stories about Geviha ben Pesisa. These are famous. It's a famous Gemara. So Geviha ben Pesisa, which we learned last week, was a hunchback, said to the Chachamim, to the elders, like this. He proposed like this: Tnu li rishus, give me permission. It means let me go on your behalf. I'll go to the judgment with these, according to Marsha, these Girgashis, these Africans, that claim to be descendants of Canaan and want to land of Eretz Yisrael. Lifnei Alexander Mogdan, and before Alexander smoked them, before Alexander the Great. If I'll be victorious, Amro, we will say, Hedit Shabanu, sorry, if they're gonna win me, if they're gonna win the debate and win the case, so to say. So we could say later we have a backup plan. We could say, well, he should never have been representing us. You beat a commoner. We need to send the proper advocate. And a Geviha Pesisa says, and if I'm victorious, so Oisam, if I'm going to be Natseach Oisam, I'm going to beat them in this judgment. It wasn't just a debate that had no consequences. It was a debate that evidently Alexander the Great would make a ruling, right? Is Amr Lahem, so then I won't claim glory. I'll say Taris Moshe Nitzachtem. I'm an advocate from the Torah. It's the Torah that beat you. So so they gave him their okay to go represent them in front of Alexander the Great. So he goes. Amr Lahem, he tells the people of these Gergoshim, the people, he says, what's your proof that the land is yours? They said, Minat Torah, that your own Bible clearly says, Eretz Canaan L'Gvuloi said. It's a verse in the Torah. Amr Lahan, he says, if that's the case, if you want to quote if you're going to quote the Bible to me, to the Torah at me, so I'm not going to have a conversation with you outside of the Torah. We're going to look in the Torah to see how I can respond to your claim. Shenemar, what's the Torah say? Torah says that when Ham, right, the third son of Noach, went and was inappropriate with his father, right? Different things what he did, whether he raped him, whether he castrated him. Either way, he got cursed, right? So the Gemara says, the Torah says that the Torah itself says, Or Canaan, that the Canaan is cursed. He doesn't curse Ham. He curses Canaan himself, Eved, which is the son of Ham. What is the curse? Eved avadim yilachav. He should be a slave to his brothers. Eved shekanin achasim, Eved leminu achasim lemi. So Geviha Pesisa says, even if you want to claim right to the land, because it says Eretz Canaan L'Gvuloi, but you've been cursed to be a slave to your brothers. And the halach is that whatever a slave buys belongs to the master. The slave has no ownership of anything because the slave himself belongs to the master, unless there's extreme circumstances where the Torah finds ways for that not to be the case. But in general, whatever the slave buys belongs to the owner. So he says, Eved lemi nechasim lemi. Both the slave and his possessions belong to whom? To the owner. And now he says more than that. So okay, so the Mefarshim say that so why that like this? He said there's a Mefarshim who brings out an interesting twist to this conversation. He say, who is it? It's Masha. The Masha says, the Masha first asked the questions, why did he answer such an answer? Why did the Geviha Pesisa go into such an answer? He could have just answered him and says, if you quote the Torah, the famous Rashi, right? That the Torah clearly says God gave the land to the Jewish people. So if you already quote the Torah, like Rashi, the first Rashi in the Torah says, God created the world. He gave it to Eretz Canaan up until a certain point to the people from Canaan. Then he gave it to the Jewish people. Why wouldn't he quote that? So the Mashra gives a long answer to that. But he says over here, so and he explains basically what the Mashra was saying is that their claim that the reason he couldn't answer that the Torah says so because they're coming when? They're coming after the destruction of the first temple, they're building the second temple. The Jewish people don't really have freedom. They're subjects of Alexander the Great. So the Gergoshim, or these people, came and they said that, yeah, you're right, God took away the land from us and gave it to you, but then he took it away from you. The Jewish people were exiled, the temple was destroyed. So now it's not yours, it's not ours. So it goes back to its original owner, right? The person who originally had it, we should be the ownership. So if we were just going to quote the Torah, then they could have an argument and say because the Jewish people were subjects of Alexander the Great, and he was sitting court. It could be a decision. He could decide now who to award the land to. So he didn't want to go there. He didn't want to go in that direction. That's what the Mashra answers. But the question is, why would they be subjects to the Jewish people? The Jewish people are descendants of Shem. Shem is the brother, and the halacha is like this: that when it said. But the way the Mashal learns, I think it's the Mashal. learns that Rashad Rama, there are things that Rashad learns that. So the claim that Geviha Pesisa said is that we're servants to Alexander the Great. Alexander, Greece is a descendant of Yefes. So Yefes is one brother. So Yefes is already a ruler over us because Greece ruled the world. So when it says that Eved Kanan Eved Avodim, you should be an Eved to Avodim. We are Avodim to Alexander, and therefore you're going to be an Eved to us. That's what the verse says, to be a servant of the servant. So therefore, we're the descendant of Shem, and therefore, even if you own the land, it belongs to us. Okay, that's I think it's the Mashal who says that. And he says V'loyoid. Yeah, yes, Aaron.
Okay. First, what's the point of this conversation in the Gemara? And second, I thought I may be way off, but I thought we're descendants of Noah.
Okay, so to answer two questions, the first question is that it's a very important point of the conversation. These people wanted to claim ownership of the land. At that point, the Jewish people were subjects of Alexander, and Alexander could have said they're right, and that you have to leave Eretz Yisrael, that's really Eretz Canaan, and give it back to the original owners. That's number one. So it wasn't just a theoretical conversation. They were demanding the land, the right to the land. Very similar, obviously, to what these conversations are up to the present. It's a present conversation right now, right? People are claiming river to the sea. What's that mean? The Jews shouldn't be there. Number two is your question about Noach. Noach is the father of Shem, Cham, and Yafes. So of his three sons, so now we're having a conversation. Which one of his three sons has Eretz Yisrael? Canaan had it at one point, but Cham is a servant to the servant, and we are the servants of Yefes. Yefes was Greece is part of is clearly part of Yefes, so we are the servants of Yefes, and therefore the Cham is a servant to us. The pasuk says Eved Avodim, to be a servant to the servants. Now, you're welcome. And Geviha Pesisa came to add to this, not just to say you have no claim, but there has to also be an envy conversation. It's very easy to say something. This is, by the way, an amazing tool for negotiation, right? Because we see today that in conversations, similar conversations that are happening now, there's no loss to say anything, right? People just say things, and if it flies, good. If it doesn't fly, there's no consequences. So right away, Geviha Pesisa teaches us that you can't just come in to Alexander the Great and claim something, and it's like, you only have the upside. If you win, you win. If you don't win, we had nothing to lose to make this claim. He wants it to be lost. We're going to see in every one of these arguments, there's a loss to what they're trying to get. So he says, therefore, he says, not only that, if you are a servant, and once we're having this conversation, there's been many years you haven't served us, and you owe us money, because for your lack of service, you have to compensate us. So now there's a loss for them, because they're now that we're having this conversation, you have to compensate us for all those years you didn't serve us. Alexander Mogdem, so Alexander Malka, so Alexander the king, the great, says, he's right. What do you have to say about that? Give an answer. Give us 3 days to discuss. He gave them the 3 days. They couldn't find a proper response that would be satisfactory to the king. So we see that the mile of this conversation was that Alexander the Great at least was considered to be a fair judge. We see that in the Gemaras and Midrash and talk about Alexander the Great. He was considered to be a fair judge. So he gave everyone an opportunity to give their claim. But when Geviha Pesisa said that there has to be consequences, he said that he's right. So what's your answer? He said, so what'd they do? They had no choice. Miyad Baruchu, so they themselves ran away because they had lands in Eretz Yisrael. It's evidently they lived there, because the Jewish people didn't have a total presence or ownership or total presence, I should say, only in the land, similar to what's going on now. So Miyad Baruchu, Venichu, so they left all their fields, Kashain Zores, as they were, V'karmem, Kashain Etues, and their vineyards as they were, meaning ready to be harvested. And it was the leap year. Sorry, it was a year of sabbatical, which meant that on a sabbatical year, usually we have to come on to extra blessings. God promises that he's going to give a blessing on the 6th year because we don't work the land. So now they had an extra extra amount of food because these people ran away because they had no answer, and obviously Geviha ben Pesisa was demanding payment, so they had no choice but to run away and leave everything that they had to the Jewish people that lived in the country. Okay, that's the first story. Second story: Shuv Pam Achaz Bo Bnei Mitzrayim. Now the Egyptians come. The Egyptians also come to Alexander the Great. Alexander Muktan. It doesn't say if it's the same exact time or not. It seems to be in a similar time because of the end of the story. But he comes in front of, and also Alexander didn't live that long, so it's hard to say that there was a 7-year period in between. So Alexander Mogdan, again, the Egyptians now come to have a conversation with Alexander the Great, also staking a claim against the Jewish people. They say to Alexander, it says in the Torah, and that the Jewish people, before they left Egypt, right? We have the story in from the beginning of Shemos. That God says to Moshe, the Jewish people will not leave Egypt empty-handed. That also the Egyptians will gift and lend gold and silver and precious items to the Jewish people. And so it says that God gave this chen, that the grace that the Egyptians had, and fear, obviously, with the grace came fear, to the Jewish people from the Egyptians, and they lent them gold and silver. So what is the Egyptians' issue here? They said, give us back our gold and silver. It was a loan. It says that you borrowed. So why didn't you pay back your loan? It's already been, what has it been? By then, after the destruction of the first temple, you're talking about close to 800 years, if not more. So we're talking about they want the money back. And let's say with interest. So Omer Geviha ben Pesisa. So Geviha ben Pesisa again goes to the rabbis, the Chachamim, and he says, let me go and represent the Jewish people in front of Alexander the Great. If they beat me, we'll just say I'm just a commoner, so therefore they didn't put the best representation. Maybe they'll get a second chance. Why I'm saying that is because what's the point? This is like Aaron said, the point of this conversation was that there wasn't just a theoretical conversation. They wanted to have the first people wanted the land, and the Egyptians want their money. So you can't just say, "Oh, you beat us because a commoner." They're hoping with using that claim that they would be able to have a second judgment. We have to assume that's what he means. And if I'll be victorious, that it was the Torah that beat. It wasn't. He wouldn't take any credit for it. So he says, they gave him permission to be the representation, to represent the Jewish people. So he goes to Alexander and he says to the Egyptians, what's your proof, the source? Where they say, where's your makar? Where's your source that we borrowed money from you in the first place? Actually, your Torah says so. If you want to use the Torah, so he basically was 3 steps ahead of them, right? So he says, if you bring in proof from the Torah, right? Because the Egyptians never recorded the loss they were too embarrassed to record their own recordings. There's nowhere in there. There's very little that we have from the Egyptian scholars about the Jews ever really being in Egypt, or about the Jewish people leaving Egypt, especially about the 10 plagues and all what happened over there with the great exodus. So the only source they have is the Torah. So your Torah says so. He says to them, if that's the case, then let's look into the Torah and examine my response back to you. Shneimer, because it says like this, Moshe b'nei Yisrael, and he didn't do Rashi. If you're learning just the clear Torah, it says, Moshe b'nei Yisrael, how long do the Jewish people live? Asher yashu Mitzrayim, shloishim shana v'arba meshana. If you want to quote the raw Torah, the Torah says we were there 430 years, although we start really counting the 430 years from way back when, and the 400 years really from Akedah Yitzchak. But if you want to quote the Torah says 430 years. And Tnu lanu schar avoda shel shishim ribi shi'abedtem b'Mitzrayim shloishim shana v'arba meshana. Now you enslaved 600,000 able men. Forget, never mind the women and children and the killing and the murder that they did. But just if we're talking dollars and cents, you enslaved 600,000 able men for 430 years. Oh, and sorry, he says, pay us for our work. Before we talk about the money we borrowed, that's nothing compared to what you owe us. You owed us what you never paid us for the work for this that you enslaved us. You want to talk about the Torah, let's talk about compensation for the slavery and for the exile and for all the hardships and everything that happened in Egypt, right? So Alexander of Macedon says, they're right, give an answer. So again, the Egyptians came and figured they have nothing to lose. They're going to go and try to take money from the Jewish people based on the Torah saying that the Jewish people borrowed gold and silver. Geviha and Pesisa says it's not just the answer that we don't owe you money, but you can't just make a claim and have no consequences. If you want to have a claim, there's going to be a downside. Then it's teaching them a lot. It's a lesson in negotiation. There has to be, you have to lose something in the negotiations, so there's no point, right? So now so what you owe us is a lot more than you claim I owe you. So Alexander of Macedon said, give them an answer. They're right. Geviha and Pesisa is right. The Jewish people are right. So these Egyptians, evidently, again, there were many people those days. We know the kingdom of Greece. Once Greece conquered that whole area, it wasn't like people like in the Commonwealth. People from the Commonwealth could live anywhere. So it seems like these Egyptians lived in Eretz Yisrael. So it seems like. So it says, give a response. So they said, give us 3 days. They examined, maybe they called in an accountant and obviously they had to have a claim of a dollar amount, right? So they were actually, if we have to, again, if it's not a theoretical conversation, they must have been trying to get a dollar amount out of the Jews. And I guess their accountant said that, if we're gonna do monies against monies, you're gonna owe them a lot more than they owe you. So therefore, they had no response. They left their fields and their vineyards as is, means ready to be harvested. And that year was a sabbatical. So again, if we're understanding the simple understanding of the story in its simple way, obviously, so we have to be talking about we have to presume that both these stories happened in the same time, and they're talking about the same sabbatical. Again, Alexander the Great didn't live that long, so that we would have to assume that there was 2 Shemitas in between. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not sure that makes a major difference. Next, he says, Vishuv, a third story. That it says, Pam Achas Bo B'nei Ishmael B'nei Keturah. Okay, this is really getting relevant. So then we have another approach, peoples that approach Alexander the Great to take issue with the Jewish people and our claim to the land of Eretz Yisrael. So the sons of Ishmael, the descendants of Ishmael, and the descendants of Keturah. Keturah, when we say Keturah, we're talking about the end of Parshas Chayesara, where it talks about Avram Avinu taking a second wife, which Rashi says Keturah is Hagar again, so it's Ishmael's mother a second time. He has a second family, so to say, at the end of his life. We're talking about after the Akedah, we're talking about after Sarah's passing, we're talking about Avram he was 10 years older than Sarah, we're talking about after Avram was already 137 years old. So he takes Hagar back as a wife, if we're according to Rashi that Keturah and Hagar are the same person, and he has a second family, he has descendants. Okay, so therefore the descendants of Avram. And now they're not claiming, but Canaan is claiming that the Jewish people have no right to the land, but they're saying we are descendants of Avram, and Avram was given the land, and we're descendants, so we have to share in the inheritance. And not only that, Ishmael was claiming to be a Bechor. He was older. He's older 13 years than Yitzchak, right? So Bnei Ishmael, Bnei Keturah, Lodim in Yisrael, the Jewish people, Ifnei Alexander Mogdan, in front of Alexander the Great, to claim rights to Eretz Yisrael. So Amru Loi, they say to Alexander, Eretz Canaan Shalanu, the Eretz Canaan is ours, Vishalachem, to both. I mean, it's not just the Jewish people. It's not just the Jewish people are descendants of Avram. Tichsiv, like it says, Eila told us Ishmael ben Avram. The Torah clearly says Ishmael is the son of Avram. Again, a lot of what we're saying over here is not, it wasn't just the simple conversation. The question was, at what stage? We have to remember that Hagar was a shivcha. She was a maidservant. The laws of the descendant, there's no real claim that a maidservant's descendants have. According to law, the children of a shivcha are not children. So therefore, that means of a maidservant, they're not children. So therefore, in theory, Yishmael wouldn't have a claim to the land because he's the ben Shivcha. However, he's quoting the pasuk Yishmael ben Avram. The Torah does say Yishmael the son of Avram. So we see that at one point Hagar no longer was considered a Shivcha Sarah, the maidservant, and now she was given, so to say, her freedom, and Yishmael should be a regular descendant of Avraham, and be able to claim also, even I think up to the Bechor. Yeah, Aaron, you want to ask something?
Ben Shifka, I mean.
The son of a maidservant. A shivcha is a maidservant. Hagar, which was Yishmael's mother, was a maidservant to Sarah. So the law is that the children of a maid don't have the same claim as the children of a wife. Okay. So therefore, but he says that the verse says Yishmael ben Avram. The Torah says that I'm a son of Avram. Didn't call me a ben Shivcha. V'chsiv Eila told us Yitzchak ben Avram, and it says Yitzchak is the son of Avram. So we're the son of Avram, and they're the son of Avram. You're the son of Avram. Pesisa, so the same. So they're coming to claim the land. It doesn't say what the Bnei Keturah said, but the Bnei Keturah, just were there part of the conversation. The Bnei Keturah, there's no. It's clearly that Hagar or her Keturah didn't have the status of a shivcha at that time, but Yishmael wanted to claim also to be a. I think the Mefarshim say that the reason why they're talking about Yishmael was because Yishmael was wanted to claim to be a machar. I think that's what he said. Okay, so he says, so the same thing. So they want to share. Now they want to share the land, right? Dealing with this two-state solution. So he says, so they say like this. So he says, Amalam Geviha Pesisa said to the rabbis, give me permission. I will represent you in front of Alexander Macedon. If they're going to beat me, then we'll just say that I was a commoner and we didn't have good representation. Then I will obviously give the credit to the Torah. I think if you have to, again, in everything over here, it's not just if we learn out from a diuk in the Gemara. And the Torah is more, but if we learn out from a diuk of the Gemara, halachas, the Gemara said this, and the Gemara didn't say that. We learn from language of Rashi and Tosfos halachas. So the Gemara is not just the free with its pen. Everything is. We know that in Agadah, like we said last class, in the seemingly stories of the Torah of the Gemara is where all the secrets of Torah is. So it says when he's saying that Torah's Moshe Nitzachtem, that Moshe's Torah beats is victorious, and it wasn't me. It's not just to say that I'm not taking credit. There's more than that. It's to say that Torah says it's like this. The Torah establishes the fact. The point is that what he wants, what Geviha ben Pesisa is doing over here is a schus l'doros. Means if a Geviha ben Pesisa would claim that he himself, with his logic, beat and one was victorious, so that's a conversation that happened once upon a time. What he was doing was saying that with the Torah itself is what establishes the facts. It's not what I'm saying, it's what the Torah is saying. And therefore, whenever we're going to have this conversation, if it's 2,000 years later, in 2024, we're going to have this exact same conversation again. So we're again going to examine the Torah to see what the Torah says is the facts. And the Torah is going to tell us what the story is, what the facts are. And so therefore, like the Rebbe always quoted, the first Rashi, till today, the Rebbe used to quote, till our times, the Rebbe would say, the first Rashi says that this is the land of Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Jewish people. So therefore, Geviha ben Pesisa says, I'm going to say Torah's Moshe Nitzachtem. This is from the Torah. The Torah is Torah's emes, and Torah lives forever. He goes to this setting with the court. He says, what's your proof that you are descendants of Avram, and therefore should be equal partners, or even to take a double portion, being a Bechor? So they said, just in grammar, it says Omar singular. The other cases it says He says, okay. So he says, I'm sorry, Amrlai, they said to Mina Torah. Amrlan, he said to them, Afani Evi Rai Mina Torah. Shnemar, the Torah says, so you're saying it says Yishmael ben Avram, but the Torah also says at the end of Chayesara, Vayitin Avram, Es Kol Asher Yitzchak. He gave everything to Yitzchak. Well, and he says, what is he says, you're a Pelegesh, you weren't real marriage. Even Keturah was a Pelegesh, which is not has a different, it's not a Shivcha. But a Pelegesh is a concubine, it's not a proper marriage, or it's not a full marriage. Asher Avram, Nasan means the descendants of the Pelegesh. Nasan Avram Matanis, he gave special gifts, and he sent him away. And he left everything for Yitzchak. So you're saying that your descendants, the Torah clearly says that the Bnei Pelakshim, even Hagar had a gather of a Pelegesh, and therefore Yishmael included, and all he got was he got matanis, he got gifts, but doesn't have a claim to the land because everything that he owned he gave to Yitzchak. And Av Shnasan Agitin Levan of Bechayav. So Geviha ben Pesisa says if the father, so to say, gives a get, cuts off, disinherits any of his children in his lifetime, Vishigur Zem Yazeh Klum Yesh Lezeh Klum. So if you want to say you have any claim, he said he gave you what he's going to give you in his lifetime and sent you away. So therefore, you've been given your share and had nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael. Everything else went to Yitzchak, including Eretz Yisrael. Like he says, Agitin, if someone writes, Rashi says, that one shouldn't take in the portion of his friend, meaning of the other descendant. Like Avram did to Ishmael, which he sent all the children away. That Yishmael has no claim to what Yitzchak has. So therefore, you have no claim. It means your whole source of a claim is the Torah, and the Torah also continues to tell us what happened. And in that conversation, the Torah says that Avram disinherited or gave a separate inheritance to the other children. So just the Mefarshim asked the question. The Gemara says you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to inherit one son. The halacha says you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to. When what Avram did, seemingly, as the Gemara Ksubah says, that a person shouldn't disinherit or give everything to one child over another child, because the Gemara says you don't even know what's going to come from all this. We don't know yet. You're looking at it now. Maybe one day the next son is going to the son that you don't want to inherit is going to have nicer kids. This means your grandkids will be nicer from the one you're disinheriting. From the one who has kids is going to be who you do like now. Maybe his kids are going to be spoiled brats, and you're not going to want them to inherit you. So the Gemara says it's not a good idea to do this in your lifetime. Yes, Aaron.
You don't bring up your daughter's kids in any of this.
But I mean, the halachas of a daughter, that's another conversation that we learn in the Gemara. In Parshas Pinchas, when it talks about the inheritance of daughters do inherit, but the question is in what circumstances according to Torah. But we're talking about children. In general, the Gemara talking about whatever it is that however the inheritance is going to go, the Gemara says it's not wise. A person should not do that. So the question is, why would Avram disinherit Yishmael or not give him an inheritance and give it to Yitzchak? And so it doesn't bring up Esav in the conversation, but because Yitzchak did have Esav as a son, and in some ways Esav is worse than Yishmael. But he says Yishmael did tshuva to end, right? It says that clearly in the Torah. Esav did not, but it says over here. So he answers that first of all, Yishmael was wrong. He was the son of a shivcha, and therefore he was born. He had no claim because the idea that he thinks he's a bachor, he's the firstborn, wouldn't apply because he only became a proper son, recognized as a proper son after he was born, and therefore he doesn't have a claim to be.
Or makes him proper.
The Avram would take him as a son, not to no longer consider him to be a maidservant's child. I mean, when his mother was freed, it kind of maybe upgraded the status of Ishmael as a child. So gotcha. He says that's one thing it says, and it says basically at the end of the day is God told him. It means at the end of the day is Ki Yitzchak Yikar Chazara. And also God told Avram to listen to Sarah. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen. And Sarah says to Avram, I don't want Ishmael to inherit with Yitzchak. And God told Avram to listen to Sarah. So therefore, even though traditionally a father shouldn't kind of set his arrangements and be unequal with the children in his lifetime, it means that he's inheriting one child over the next, because you never know what's going to come at the end. What looks good now may not look good later, and what looks bad now might not be as bad later. Plenty of cases where grandchildren are much better than the parents, or worse. But in this case, there's a difference, because God says that Yitzchak is Yikar L'Chazara, and God said to listen to Sarah, and Sarah says clearly, doesn't she say, I don't like Ishmael? She says, Kilo Yirash, I don't want Yitzchak, Yishmael to be part of the Yerusha, part of the inheritance. And God told Avram to listen to Sarah. Okay. So therefore, at the end, it doesn't say what happened over here. In this case, it doesn't say that they ran away, because they had nothing to run away from. Because in this case, Geviha and Pesisa didn't have a flip. So we see that the end of the story shows us, in the negotiation, of the three cases, he had nothing he couldn't claim anything from Ishmael or Bnei Keturah. They had a claim. He refuted their claim, but doesn't say A, that he ran away, and doesn't say B, that he demanded anything from them. So in this case, they had a claim, and they wanted actually to get part of the land, and Geviha was able to disinherit that they shouldn't get, and doesn't even say what Alexander the Great responded. It says he answered, and that was the answer. So he says like this: "My matanis." Now the pasuk says, what did Avram do? It says that he gifted the children of the Pelagshim, of the concubines, and he sent them away. What are the matanas? What were the gifts? It's a famous Gemara. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Ava. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Ava says, V'lamed, we learn from here, Shemasar lahem shem tuma, he gave them impurity, or the name of impurity. Rashi says, what's shem tuma? Chishuf u'maisa sheidim. He gave them magic, and I'm not sure what maisa sheidim is different than magic, but maisa sheidim seems to mean demons' works. So magic is an illusion, or something that's not true. Maisa Shedim is kind of a supernatural power that the demons have, and he let them plug into that energy of Maisa Shedim. But they're all under the auspices of Tumah, of impurity, and he gave them the impure powers of the world to the descendants of Keturah and Hagar, and the same person, so Ishmael and his siblings. If Keturah is Hagar, then Ishmael and the children of Keturah are full siblings, not just half brothers. And he gave them Shem Tum, he gave them purity, which had an energy. It says it has Kishuf and it has Maisa Shedim. Rashi brings down, I think Rashi al Torah brings down that he gave them all the money he got from different peoples over the time, like from Egypt, and when he made money, from people paying him for his services of fighting. Whatever he took, he gave away to, if I'm not mistaken, he gave that to Bnei Keturah. But here he says Shem Tuma. Rashi, I think, also quotes it. The Mefarshim actually ask on this. It's not so simple. How would he give them Shem Tuma? Why would he give his descendants, impure powers? I mean, you're not supposed to. It's brought down that even for the sons of Noach, which Yishmael had the din of the son of Noach, which means he had to keep the 7 Noahide laws. He didn't have to keep the 630 mitzvahs, but he had to keep the 7 Noahide laws, and including 7 Noahide laws in a bylaw is the prohibition of magic. So there's different answers to that question. He says some people say he taught them how to avoid it, and others say that it's only prohibited in Eretz Yisrael, not in Chutz La'aretz. So they took it out of Eretz Yisrael. He also says some people say that he only gave them Maisa Shedim, not magic. And Maisa Shedim, which is demons' works, is not considered magic. It's just impure energy, where magic is prohibited, but not Maisa Shedim. And again, I'm not exactly sure 100% technically what Maisa Shedim is, but this is what he gave them. However, I know usually we go a little longer. but today I have to end early, so we're going to end over here. And next week we'll start with the Gemaras. I'm sorry we went slow today. Next week we're going to go to the Gemaras of Antoninus, which is the famous Antoninus, which is according to Rabbi Steinsaltz, is possibly Marcus Aurelius, which was one of the emperors of the time, and his very close relationship with Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the author of the Mishnah, so much so that at the end Rabbi says that he learned things from the Torah, from Antoninus, that Antoninus had a certain intuition and understanding in the Torah, even above Rabbi. We know that when Rivka was told by Shem when she went to the yeshiva, Rashi says that two nations are in your stomach is referring to Rebbe and Antoninus. So the relationship that Rebbe and Antoninus was a descendant of Esav. He was Roman, and Rebbe was obviously a descendant of Yaakov. So that relationship started all the way back in the womb of Rivka in a positive way, because that was a positive relationship. Some people say he ended up converting to Judaism. All right, Laila Tov, everyone, and Shavua Tov. Take care. Okay,